Welcome to season 2, and I cannot ask for a better start of a new season. Today, joining me is amazing personality from UAE, Abu Dhabi. She's senior air traffic control officer, instructor, a speaker, a podcast host, and wearing many, many hats. Please welcome Jouhayna AlMheiri. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Jouhayna, tell us about yourself.
So I think the introduction nails all my titles. I am an air traffic control officer, and it's a fairly unknown field, even though it's a massive industry. So for those of you that are watching that don't know what air traffic control is, basically I provide instructions to pilots in the sky that overfly the United Arab Emirates, providing them with instructions to keep them separated from other aircraft, as well as obstructions. By obstructions, we've got mountains up north, the Burj Khalifa, which everybody knows. So there are certain requirements which we have in order to keep the skies of the UAE safe. So that's my role. And if there are any younger viewers that are watching that need to understand it a little bit more, my favorite analogy is Spider-Man, and I'm sure you've seen this video that I posted recently. So Spider-Man's best friend, Ned, calls himself the guy in the chair, and he watches over Spider-Man on a computer screen, and he speaks to him through a headset, telling him where to go to keep him safe from the bad guys. So instead of Spider-Man, we speak to multiple pilots at the same time to keep them safe and separated from other aircraft.
No, great. I saw your videos recently. You posted, and it's a series called Under a Minute with JOH, and that's Instagram, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's on Instagram, just to spread more awareness to the youth. I feel it's very important to do that. And when I go speak at schools, that's how they usually find me. And they're like, how do I get into aviation? If it's not air traffic control, I link them with the contacts I have in the various fields in aviation so they can get mentored correctly from early on, because I didn't have that. So I'm super passionate about helping the youth, and Instagram is where I found most of them made contact.
Yeah, okay. Jouhayna, it's a very male-dominated profession, right?
Yeah.
How did you decide to go for it? And did you have any reservations?
I didn't have many reservations, to be honest. I think it's because of how I was raised. I was raised by 3 super strong, resilient women. I like to say they have a pioneering spirit: my mother, my auntie, and my grandmother. And they made sure that, as opposed to some cultural norms that we have here, where there is segregation in school from early on to make sure that the male and female students are separated. I think it's after 5th or 6th grade. But there are some schools that are still co-ed. So my mom made sure that I stayed in a co-ed school. So I was actually never really uncomfortable to work with men. And I wasn't, it wasn't a factor for me to be like, oh, that's something that I'm uncomfortable with. So that was there. But the reason why I joined air traffic control, I was actually quite lost in high school. I didn't know exactly what it is that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And, you know, we're asked this question from a young age: what do you want to be when you grow up? And I never knew the correct answer, because I genuinely had no idea what my calling was. And people always said to me, they're like, oh, you have so much potential, you just have to channel it correctly. But I didn't know what to channel it towards. So what I realized is that even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to be independent. So I applied to lots of scholarship programs: urban planning, pilot, engineer of all sorts, civil, aeronautical, everything, you name it, and multiple other ones. I can't remember now. It's been almost a little bit over a decade. So I applied to a bunch of them, and air traffic control got back to me and showed the most promise. So worldwide, the statistic is, for applicants to successfully make it into an air traffic control training program, is only 1%.
Okay.
And just to get into the program, we're not even talking about making it through the program. So just to get into the program is 1%. And I didn't realize that. I found out the statistic much later in my career. So I got into the program there's a series of examinations and interviews to make sure that they're taking the correct person on. So I went through them, I got them done, alhamdulillah, I passed, everything went well. And then after I got into the program, I realized the fail rate is extremely high. And because it's male dominated, it's very high, mostly for the males. So I think it averages between 70 to 90%, depending on the unit that you're working in. And it's simply because it is such a tough job. And sometimes to be able to compartmentalize that everything on your screen is human life and you are not allowed to make mistakes. I feel like that's one of the main reasons why some people may struggle. So yeah, and I was recruited when I was 19. So imagine a 19-year-old being told to have all this responsibility. So yeah, I think that that's one of the main things. So I just went for it and I pushed and did the best that I could. And my main motivation was my family because, again, I was an all-female household. Mom was getting a little tired, and we reached a point where I had to become the head of the house, pretty much, and financially support and provide. And I've always been the older sister that took care of everyone, including my mother. So, you know, it's just, I had to get it done, and I got it done. I didn't really have much of a choice in the matter once I got into the program.
Yeah.
So despite the odds being against me,
Yeah.
I pushed through and persevered.
See, this is a great message for anyone who is watching. Like once Nelson Mandela says, "I never lose. I either win or learn." You know, so that's
Exactly.
that's how it should be, right? You go and you try. When you try, you get something. You have to have a passion and consistency, and the results will come. Okay.
Yeah.
My other question will be: you have talked about a lot about women empowerment. Okay, what is the motivation behind it?
So like I said, I've always been the big sister, and I feel like that role goes outside of my family. I'm naturally a nurturer, and I love to care for people, and I love to educate as well. I always sat with my sisters after school and taught them. And even when I was in the batch that I studied in, I would sit with. I was the only female in the batch at the time, so I would sit and I would collect the boys. We'd go sit in Costa Coffee, and we'd study every single day and make sure that we're empowering one another. So it's not just female empowerment. If there's anybody that I can genuinely help and they feel empowered after, fantastic. So I think it's more about being there for other people and taking care of them, because it's not just the women that would need that essentially. I feel like anybody who's there, if they feel empowered after, that's what I'm looking for. And it's, if you have the knowledge, you are empowered, right? It's knowledge and education is everything. So definitely have a passion for that. And I feel it's just the way that I'm built. It's my personality. I've always been that way. So yeah, I think that's where it stems from. It's the big sister in me. That's everyone's big sister.
Have you ever felt like fear or nervous? You know, it's this profession is like super important. You are a senior air traffic controller, right? And you're teaching others. And was there any point then you said, "Oh, I can't do it," or "It's so difficult," or "How I'm going to do it," or who is pushing you on the back, who's helping you on the critical decisions, basically?
So as I said, I got recruited really young, and it's the case almost everywhere in the world. You're recruited usually straight out of after high school if they don't need a university degree in terms of their recruitment requirements. So I got recruited quite early, and as young as you could get recruited, I got recruited, which alhamdulillah, that's great. But the program is approximately 2.5 to 3 years. So mine took around 2.5 years, and you are taught anything and everything that you need to know to handle that job in that period of time. It's not just theoretical, you're also put in a simulated environment where you can practice and learn on how to control aircraft. So you're given all the tools. There is no excuse if you choose to put 110% of your effort, because 100% isn't enough. You need to give everything. Like the other day, I was going through my drawers and just cleaning out the house, and I found those unbreakable Nokias because I even gave up my phone, everything, and I was like, I'm focusing only on this. So I gave myself completely to the job and the training for 2.5 years, and it paid off for sure. And I made sure that I knew anything and everything I needed to know, because you can't afford to know even 1% less of everything. And when you're working, you've had years and years of knowledge. So it's almost like your A levels, right? You're studying for 2 years, and then that one day you need to remember everything you've learned, because it depends on what questions you get. Because I studied the British curriculum towards the end of my educational career. So it was quite like that. And it's a good analogy to use. You're studying for 2 years and you have no idea what's going to come in your exam. But you need to remember whatever it is you learned, even from the first year of your A levels. So that's how I like to explain it. as well. So I'm fully prepared and I know everything that I need to know, because every day you go in, sometimes the restrictions change. So for example, one day you have to do things a certain way or you can use a certain airspace, but the next day you can't use it for certain reasons. So you need to be able to adapt as well. So I just make sure that I know anything and everything that I need to know. The training program is a very long time. It's almost half of a university career as well. And I had a lot of really good mentors. So I was very young again. So you imagine I had all of this responsibility that I realized I had onto myself, because when I joined the job, I didn't fully understand exactly what it entailed. I knew I have to separate aircraft, but it didn't dawn on me the extent and the seriousness of the job until I actually got into it.
Yeah.
So I had many mentors tell me that, it's really good for you. And, later on, you'll be very financially stable. You won't have to rely on anyone. And that is what I wanted, to be independent. So the motivation was there. And there were people that pushed me in the correct way and were like, you can do this. You have what it takes. Of course, it was almost a 50-50 balance. You hear the good, you hear the bad. But I chose to hear the good. And it was, you can do this. It's worth it. Push and persevere. And if there's anything I wasn't sure of, everybody you can ask that knows me in person, they're so sick and tired of all my questions. Because if I even don't understand 1% of whatever it is, I will be like, explain, but why? But why? Explain it until I fully understand. So I think that personality trait that I had naturally definitely helped with building my career, because the foundation has to be completely solid to build from there up. And I made sure that I did that.
I think this is another great message, that you have to ask questions.
Oh,
Better
100%.
to ask and make yourself clear. Like I read somewhere, and it says, when your why is clear, then how is easy, right? So
Yeah.
that's super important. Okay, I ask these questions to everyone who comes to my podcast. When would you
Yeah.
say you have taken this first step, which changed your life?
It was when I made the decision to start applying to different programs. And I'd have been applying to so many places. And I remember specifically when I applied to this air traffic control program, I struggled to find the recruitment page. And I think it's because I was like researching it in the middle of the night. I remember it was super late and I couldn't find the page and I was so exhausted. And I was like, but I have to apply to this one last place. I had a list every day at my to-do list, and this was on my to-do list. So I couldn't find the page, and it was my own fault. Like, I think it was the fatigue. So I sent an email to customer service, and it was one sentence. And I was like, my name is Jouhayna AlMheiri. I'm 18 years old. I'm good at English, literally super basic email. I didn't even say greetings of the day or whatever. I'm good at English and I'm interested in the ATC program, full stop, period. And I sent it. So I didn't actually go through the formal channels to apply. And they were really good. They called me the next day. They're like, send your CV. And I was like, okay. So, even if you feel like you don't, even if it's not a formal channel, just send the email to customer service. And that's how it worked out for me. And then, of course, I took the formal channels and I did everything. But if you have something on your list, make sure you get it done. Even if you think that, oh, it's not the way to do it, just do it. Because that email to customer service literally changed my entire life.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Jouhayna, what message you give to someone who has ideas to do something, whether they're going for studies, for a business, or anything, and we always had these plans or ideas, but we are reluctant to take that step for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
Family member will say, friends will say, okay, how I'm going to do it? I'm scared. There's a fear, element of fear, right? So
Yeah.
what message you give to that person?
So first it is, you should ask yourself am I doing this for me? Right? And if the answer is yes, then look into the steps and the actions to take. Like I said, my to-do list was apply to the GCA. So I sent an email, even though it wasn't a formal application. So whatever it is, ask yourself who you're doing it for. Because one of the other alternative paths that I could have taken, which would have made my mother extremely happy, was to take over the family business. She was a veterinarian, she had her own practice, and I loved working with her, but it wasn't for me. I could have done it. I could have done a great job at it, but it wasn't for me. And that's why I told her, I'm like, Mom, I don't want to do it, but I will find my own path. Please just hang in there and believe in me. And I'm very lucky that she did. So I decided that, again, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I actually let the universe decide and like Naseed. So I applied to all the programs, and air traffic control is the one that came back to me with the most reward, but the highest like fail rate pretty much compared to the rest of them at least. So decide what it is. If it's for you, go for it. Make a plan on how you're going to execute it, because if you don't have a plan, it's not going to work out. And this is going to sound maybe a little crazy to some people. Don't have a plan B, because I didn't. I went for it. And if you have a plan B to fall back on, you're going to be okay to fall backwards instead of fall forwards into your plan A.
Yeah.
But your only plan should be this plan, and you do anything and everything to pursue it and achieve it. Because if I had a plan B, those days when I felt like it was really tough and all of that, because it was tough. There were some days that were amazing and I was like, yes, this is my calling. And some days I'm like, that was a really difficult session or a difficult day, naturally so, because it is a very tough, mentally tough. It's a very mentally tough program worldwide. So if I had a plan B, I would have just been like, well, I could do this instead. If it doesn't work out, I could.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that choice. I had to make it. And I had people relying on me. I had my mother, my two younger sisters. We had a house to pay off, their education as well. So I was pretty much like the quote unquote woman of the house. So I needed to make sure that I fall right into plan A and move forward instead of fall back on the plan B.
That's a big risk, right? Because you only go for what you have in your mind, what is in front of you. Like you said, no plan B. Okay, you have to make it happen. Okay, you have to push yourself, and that's how you get in life, right? Jouhayna,
Exactly.
thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that you give me your time. I know you're very busy. You're doing the amazing job. Keep doing it. And
Thank you. So are you.
Thank you very much. Bye now.